My name is Savannah Carter. The day I moved into a rundown wooden cabin in the Colorado Pines, my mother sent a single text. Don't come home for the holidays. You made your choice. She didn't ask how I was, didn't wish me well, just a period at the end of a sentence. It all started when I used a small inheritance from my grandmother to buy an abandoned cabin for $1,100 instead of wiring the money to my sister to help her expand her spiritual healing retreat. They called me a traitor. They removed me from the family group chat, erased me from the photo albums, left me out of holiday dinners. But maybe the most painful part was realizing I'd never actually been counted as part of that family to begin with. My diagnosis was also counted against my family. Have you ever had to choose between truth and acceptance, between self-respect and a seat at a table where you were barely tolerated? Leave a comment if you've ever felt like the outsider. Like this video and subscribe to the channel if you want to hear the full story. Because what they did next, you wouldn't believe. I got used to the feeling of not being chosen. Even as a kid, every gaze in the house seemed drawn to Haley. She was always called Mom's little ray of sunshine, our daily dose of joy. And me? I was too serious, too sensitive, too much in my head. Soft ways of saying I didn't fit the family picture my mother wanted to frame. I remember once, in 3rd grade, my teacher sent home a letter praising my writing, saying I had the mind of someone much older. My mother never read it. She just asked if I'd helped Haley fold her costumes for her preschool performance. That performance was her jumping around to a children's song in a plastic tiara, and me, I folded the letter and hid it in a cardboard box under my bed. When I won a statewide writing award in 10th grade, I brought the certificate home with a rare burst of hope, like my heart had dared to open itself again. My mom looked at the paper, gave a small nod, then turned to Haley. Sweetheart, do you still want to sign up for that summer modern dance class? I found a teacher visiting from New York. I stood there holding my certificate while Haley squealed in delight and my stomach tightened. My dad said only this: don't get too proud, sweetheart. Real success is when people talk about you, not when you talk about yourself. The family photo album on the bookshelf told its own truth. In most pictures, I stood at the edges, if I was in them at all. Haley in the center, smiling, hands forming hearts. In one birthday photo of hers, half of my face was cut off because the camera zoomed in on the cake. There was a picture of us at a frozen lake one winter. I remember having a fever that day, but they made me come for the group photo because it wouldn't look complete without everyone. I stood in the back, arms tucked in my coat, eyes closed from the pounding in my head. That photo was printed large, framed, and hung in the living room. And then there was the Yellowstone trip. I was 14, Haley was 10. We stopped at a gas station so Mom could grab more water. I went to the restroom, and when I came out, the car was gone. I ran through the parking lot, thinking maybe they'd circled around, but there was no one. I borrowed a phone from the station attendant and called Mom. She didn't answer. I sat on a cold plastic bench near the vending machine, numb, unable to cry. About 40 minutes later, the silver SUV pulled back into the lot with a sharp stop. Mom stepped out, not panicked, just slightly annoyed. Why didn't you tell us you were using the bathroom? I swallowed the lump in my throat and whispered, I did, but Haley was crying because she didn't get her ice cream. Haley ran up and hugged me like she was the one who'd been left behind, not me, and Mom praised her. See, my girl knows how to care about her sister. I never told anyone that I sat alone that day, hugging my backpack, head resting on my knees, silent like a blurred ink stain at the edge of a page. I never brought up the time I asked to enroll in a summer creative writing course, and they said there wasn't enough money. Weeks later, Haley got a full TikTok filming kit. Lights, mic, backdrop. Mom said, investing in positive energy is necessary. And so I grew up like a dim ember tucked in the corner, afraid that if I burned too bright, I'd dim someone else's light. I learned to be quiet when hurt, to hold in tears around family, to never ask for more, never complain, never be an inconvenience. Because every time I spoke, Mom would sigh and say, Savannah, You make the whole house feel heavy. I used to think if I worked harder, became kinder, more understanding, they'd change. But every effort only pushed me further out, like my very presence was an awkward extra they never rehearsed for. Even when I helped Mom build her retreat's website, even when I edited Haley's Instagram videos late into the night, the only one mentioned was the girl who brings light to everyone. Eventually, I understood. I wasn't someone's shadow. I was a person left outside the frame. Not because I was dim, but because they never turned the camera my way. That dinner took place in the same familiar kitchen where I used to listen to the stew bubbling on the stove and the scent of lavender oil Mom always lit before family meals. The table was covered in white lace, candles already set in silver holders, and the air held that fake kind of calm that presses down on your chest. Haley had just flown in from Arizona, still wearing a cream linen coat, nails painted in soft shimmer. Mom looked at her like she was returning from some sacred journey. "We have something exciting to talk about," Mom began, scooping roasted vegetables onto my plate. "Haley's been invited to partner on an expansion up north, untouched land, pure energy." I stayed silent, holding my water glass, eyes on the faded wooden swing outside the window. "The issue," Mom continued, her tone flat but firm, "is that her partner needs financial commitment up front, about $20,000. And since this is really for the whole family—" I gently set my glass down and interrupted, "I don't have it anymore." Ellie stopped chewing. "What do you mean?" "I used it," I said, locking eyes with Mom. "I bought a house." Nobody moved for several seconds. The clink of silverware on ceramic sounded like metal dragging across glass. "You bought a house?" Mom repeated slowly, like chewing a word that wouldn't go down. "Yes," I nodded. "A small place up north. Old, but I can fix it. It's mine." Mom put her knife down. "With what money?" "Grandma's inheritance." Haley let out a short laugh, then quickly masked it. "You used all of Grandma's money to buy a house? While we're building a space to heal the community?" I looked at her. "I didn't use all of it, and your retreat isn't we." The air in the room chilled instantly. Mom looked at me, not with anger, but with disappointment, like I had turned my back on some sacred mission. "Ah, you chose poverty," she said slowly. "You chose to step off the path we built. Don't come begging later." I wanted to explain that the house wasn't some impulse, that I'd weighed every dollar, that I just wanted a roof I didn't have to ask permission to sleep under. But the words lodged in my throat as my father quietly set down his napkin, said nothing, and left the table. The next morning, I woke up in the small rental apartment in Denver. My phone screen was blank. No texts, no missed calls. When I opened the family group chat, my name was gone. On Facebook, Mom posted a photo from the dinner with the caption, "Happiness is when the family moves together toward the light." I wasn't in the picture. Days later, I received an email from the family law office managing Grandma's estate. The note read, "Beneficiary has used the fund for personal use outside original recommendations. Case closed." I printed the letter, placed it under the old photo frame of my grandmother watering her garden, then sat quietly on the floor. One question kept echoing in my head. When did choosing independence become an act of betrayal? The cabin sat tucked beneath tall pine trees, over an hour's drive from the nearest town. No neighbors close by, no streetlights, no honking cars, just wind and the creak of wood underfoot every time I moved. It was raining the first day I arrived. Water droplets thudded through the warped tin roof, slipping past cracks I couldn't hide. The smell of mildew clung to my sleeves, my hair, even my breath. But I didn't turn back. I dragged my suitcase up the uneven steps and knocked gently on the crooked door like I was asking permission from the past to enter. Inside, the dim light of a single bulb barely lit the cracks in the walls. Paint peeled in wide patches, wallpaper torn and stained like worn-out skin. Some floorboards swelled upward in warped waves. I set my bag down, opened the toolbox, and started. Not because I was handy, but because there was no one left to ask. I learned as I went, through tears when nails bent, when hinges jammed, when the door refused to close against the wind. My hands blistered after using the grinder for the first time. My knees ached from crawling under the house to inspect leaking pipes. One night, I collapsed on the kitchen floor, leaning against a moldy green cabinet, the tears falling soundlessly. I was 33, and I couldn't even turn on the heat because the wiring was fried. One afternoon, as I pried loose a rotten section of ceiling to replace the beam, something fell from between the planks. Wrapped in yellowed newspaper and covered in dust, I thought it might be a dead mouse, but when I unwrapped it, I found a small, folded note, handwriting shaky but familiar. It was my grandmother's. My dear Savannah, if you've found this letter, it means you've dared to live on your own terms, and that, more than any degree, big house, or praise, is what I always hoped you'd do. This house was where I dreamed of living when I was young. I never got the chance, but you did. There will come a day when you find peace in a place others called broken. And that's when you'll know you belong here, not because it's perfect, but because you chose it and it never chose to leave you. I don't remember how long I sat there. My eyes traced every word like I was drinking them in, afraid closing them would make the warmth vanish. I pressed the letter to my chest, feeling her arms around my shoulders as if through time. Every forgotten afternoon, every photo without me, every dinner with no seat left, every message saying, "Don't come back," it all seemed to dissolve into the seams of this wooden frame. They had no power here anymore. I cried, not because the house was falling apart, but because someone had believed in me enough to leave behind something for the day I had no one left in my corner. That night, I lit an old candle, placed the letter beside it, and sat in silence. Rain tapped against the roof. Outside, the darkness stretched thick, but for the first time in a long while, I wasn't afraid. I felt like maybe, just maybe, I could begin again, even if all I had was a leaky roof and a message from someone long gone. I was struggling to unhinge a rusted window frame in the kitchen when I heard a car pull up along the dirt road out front. The engine was soft, but enough to send a chill down my back. No one ever came out here without a reason. I stepped onto the porch, grease still on my hands, and froze. Haley. She stepped out of a shiny crossover, wrapped in a beige wool coat, hair falling in soft waves, holding a phone attached to a selfie stick, the lens pointed directly at her face. "Hello, my little light angels," she sang sweetly, turning toward the porch where I stood. "Today I'm visiting someone very special. My sister. She's living out here in peace, far from the chaos of the city. It's kind of like a personal retreat." I said nothing. I wasn't sure if it was shock or rage choking the words in my throat. She hadn't called, hadn't sent a single message, and now she was using me, this house, as a prop for her performative kindness. "Savannah's been through so much," she continued, voice soft as velvet. "And I truly believe our community can help her rebuild, find serenity again. If you're watching, please share this. Every little donation is a beam of light." A beam of light? She called this light? I stepped down the porch steps, standing directly in front of her. She gave me a quick glance, adjusted her camera angle so my face was visible, but not the cracked siding behind me. She smiled, eyes glistening, as if she were speaking to a long-lost loved one, finally reunited. I stepped back, refusing to be the backdrop of her redemption story. But she didn't need me to participate. She needed the narrative. And she believed she had every right to write it. The next morning, a neighbor handed me a printed post from Facebook. My hands went numb when I read the headline, "Help My Sister Heal, Savannah Carter's Journey to Peace." Below it was a photo of me sitting on the porch, head down, hands dusty with wood chips, evening light spilling through a cracked window behind me. I hadn't taken that photo. I'd never given permission. The description said I was a woman deeply wounded by the coldness of the world, working to recover in an abandoned home. It praised Haley for choosing to act instead of wait. The last line linked to a GoFundMe campaign asking for $50,000 to help Savannah rebuild her life. Recipient: Haley Carter Wellness, LLC. I sank into the wooden chair in front of the stove. My thoughts wouldn't form into full sentences. My hands shook, not from the cold, but from shame. The letter from my grandmother still hung by the fireplace, but now it felt like I'd been stripped bare. Haley had taken the only space I had left to be myself and turned it into a stage for strangers to pity me. I didn't call. I didn't text. I just opened my phone, pulled up GoFundMe, and scrolled through hundreds of shares, comments, and praise, calling Haley Sister of the Year, an inspiration, the one bringing family back together with love. Each word felt like a knife pressed into my chest, slicing so deep I stopped feeling the cuts. I wasn't someone who needed saving, I just needed to be left alone. But to her, my silence was the perfect canvas for her curated light. And now thousands of people were throwing money behind her spotlight, while I was still trying to patch a busted pipe beneath the sink. I couldn't sleep for 3 nights after the campaign spread across social media. Every time my phone buzzed, my heart would clench, afraid it was another flattering post about Haley or another sympathetic comment about me. They called me the broken sister, the poor woman in need of emotional restoration. No one asked if I wanted to be restored. No one asked who broke me in the first place. On Wednesday morning, a message request appeared. Hi, Savannah. I'm Melissa Doyle, an attorney specializing in image rights and personal reputation. I saw the fundraiser using your photo and story. Did you consent to that? I sat frozen for a few seconds. The question was simple, but it stirred something deep. For the first time in weeks, someone had asked what I thought. I typed one word: no. Less than 10 minutes later, another message came. I'm reviewing an application Haley submitted to the Heartlight Foundation. She listed you as currently unhoused and recovering from severe emotional trauma, and noted potential for collaboration if funding is approved. Is that true? I froze. Unhoused. Severe emotional trauma. She wrote that? I had never said anything like that. I just wanted to live in my own house, quietly fixing it piece by piece, each brick, each broken pipe, each splintered part of myself. And now, on official paperwork, I was cast as the model case study of a soul in need of healing. Melissa called soon after. Her voice was calm, sharp, but not cold. She asked me a series of questions. Had I authorized the use of my image? Was I aware of the funding applications? Had I ever signed any paperwork confirming my personal situation? I shook my head, even though I knew Melissa couldn't see me. I said I had no idea she submitted any of that. My voice sounded like it came from somewhere else, distant and detached, as if I were telling someone else's story, not my own. Melissa instructed me to begin saving everything: screenshots, messages, live streams, comments, and fundraising content. She said, we don't need to make noise. We need to be steady and legal. That night, I placed my laptop on the chipped wooden table in the living room, sat cross-legged on the floor, and reopened every link Haley had shared. I rewatched the video of her arriving at my house, slowing down each frame, stopping at the forced smile when she said my name on the live stream. I took notes on the exact minute she mentioned my sister rebuilding her life, and captured a screenshot when she said all donations will go toward helping Savannah find her home again. I reviewed the public documents from the community page Melissa sent me. Haley had submitted an emergency funding application under the name Home for Healing, attaching a photo of me carrying a leaking bucket, wearing a knit cap, hands stained with white paint. She wrote, my sister lost her direction after cutting ties with our family. I want to help her rebuild from the ground up. I was never lost. It's pushed away, and now she had assigned me a journey I never chose to take. Each sentence felt like a slice of glass, but I read every word. I needed to face the truth. Not to reclaim justice, but to reclaim the voice that had been smothered for too long. At midnight, I paused beside my grandmother's portrait by the window. I whispered, I won't let them rewrite this story. Then I turned back to the table, organizing the evidence, not for revenge, but to restore the dignity they took without asking. I sat alone in the small kitchen, the warm yellow light casting down over the peeling wood table, where my laptop was open and my phone was set to silent. On the screen was Haley's live stream launch of her new retreat, The Return to Light. Behind her was a space glowing with candles, greenery, and soft ambient music playing through speakers. She wore an ivory dress, her hair in loose braids, face carefully made up as if light were radiating from her skin. "We are here," Haley said, her voice like honey stirred into warm tea, "to heal, to reconnect with the deepest truths within us, and sometimes that journey begins with forgiveness." I didn't look into her eyes on screen. I watched the people clapping behind her, the smiles, the phones raised, the flowing praise in the chat window. She didn't know yet. I knew the letter had arrived. Melissa confirmed just minutes earlier. Her assistant had placed the envelope directly into the hands of the event's legal coordinator, just as planned. And then, like an unscripted tear in fabric, the tone shifted. While Haley bowed and turned to accept a bouquet from a sponsor, a man in a suit stepped from backstage, holding a pale yellow envelope. He didn't look into the camera. He simply placed the envelope on the reception table and whispered something to a staff member. The camera didn't catch it fully, but the frame shook just enough for the audience to sense the shift. Haley glanced over. For a brief second, her face went pale before she forced a smile. She turned back to the camera, her voice softer. "Let's continue now with our sound meditation." But no one was paying attention. A staffer approached her, leaned in, and whispered into her ear. Haley's hand froze midair. Under the livestream table, someone pulled the laptop closer and opened the letter. I couldn't hear anything, but I watched her face harden, her eyes darting between the screen and the document before finally looking up, straight at the camera. The live stream cut off right then. No goodbye, no gentle outro, just connection lost, followed by a black screen. 10 minutes later, social media exploded. A clip went viral, Haley frozen in place, hand clenched, soft light falling on her tense face. Someone had filmed it from a distance. The envelope, stamped with Melissa's law firm logo, sat clearly in view on the welcome table. The hashtag Return to Fraud flooded every platform. People who once praised Haley began to ask questions. Comments poured in. What was that about? Why did she cut the stream? Is that really her sister, charity, or a performance? I stayed still, not joyful, not vindicated, just still, with the strange feeling that someone had finally opened a room that had been locked from the inside for far too long. There was no gust of air, just the quiet truth stepping into the light, steady and unstoppable. 3 days later, I received an email from a reporter named Adrian Marks. He wrote for the community investigations section of the Rocky Valley Tribune. The subject line was simple: "We're digging into the truth." Adrian said he'd been tracking federal grants given to Haley's retreat center over the past 2 years, especially those from a fund supporting mental health outreach for women in remote areas. One of the applications, filed under the Return to Light project, explicitly stated that the sister currently lives in unstable housing with no income, in need of comprehensive recovery support. The attached appendix included my home address, photos of me fixing my roof, and a clip of me lowering my head on the porch, taken from the shortened live stream. I wasn't surprised, just felt my hands shake as I signed the declaration, disassociating myself from the project. Adrian asked if he could quote me in the upcoming article. I agreed. No edits needed. I had stayed quiet long enough. A week later, the story went live with the headline, "When Healing Becomes a Product, Cracks Behind the Retreat Glow." It detailed the grant files, the murky finances, and the narrative spun around the image of the wounded sister, me, used to fabricate empathy. Evidence included leaked internal emails from a former staffer, one of which showed Haley writing, "Let her rot in that shack, trauma cells." Read that line 4 times. Each word felt like a stone shoved straight into my chest. Not because I hadn't sensed her disregard, but because now it was documented, signed, sealed, undeniable. At a fundraising gala the next week at the Fairmont Hotel, Haley still showed up. Long white gown, crystal bracelets, smile as polished as ever. The evening followed its script until the host announced, and now, a video tribute to the meaningful journey of the retreat. The LED screen lit up. At first, familiar images, forest paths, outdoor yoga, vegan meals with candlelight. Then, an unexpected video played, unscripted. The leaked text appeared, a screenshot of the email. Let her rot in that shack. Trauma sells. Then came clips from the grant files, the live stream, and the published article. The room fell silent. People looked at each other. A major sponsor, a representative from the Blue Spring Health Organization, stood up and spoke clearly. We are withdrawing from the program and will be reviewing all future funding relationships. Haley froze. Her eyes bounced between the screen and the stage, her lips tightening, then parting as if to speak, but no one was listening. A few guests began to leave. Murmurs broke out like waves crashing on shore. Cameras flashed non-stop. Someone shouted, "Is she really your sister, or just a fundraising tool?" I wasn't there. I was at home, in my old kitchen, reading the news off a dim computer screen. Outside, the wind rustled through the newly patched roof. There was no feeling of triumph in my chest, no revenge, just a wide, quiet emptiness, where I had once longed to be trusted, to be seen, to be loved as a real part of a family. That emptiness wasn't a wound anymore, it had become ground, where I was quietly building something of my own. The days that followed passed in a strange quiet. No more anonymous calls, no more rumors, no more images used without permission. I woke up each morning to the gentle chill of the mountains, brewing coffee with my hands, watching the soft fog drift past the window. The cabin still had many unfinished corners, but it no longer felt cold. It held the sound of my footsteps, the creak of freshly nailed boards, the whistle of the kettle, and a silence that no longer frightened me. I decided to host a small cleanup day for the neighborhood. Nothing fancy. Just a few handwritten notes posted at the general store and a wooden sign out front. Saturday, let's freshen up this little yard. Lemonade, cookies, and a place to leave your story. That morning, as I placed the glass pitcher of lemonade on the old wooden table I had set up as a stand, I wasn't sure anyone would come. But they did, one by one. Mr. Giles, from the end of the road, brought a shovel and a sack of seeds. The Turner couple came with their 6-year-old daughter holding a box of sidewalk chalk. The town librarian, with her round glasses and a linen-wrapped bag of cookies. No one asked me about Haley. No one looked at me like the centerpiece of some dramatic story. They just worked, pulling weeds, trimming branches, resetting the stones around the old maple. The children ran around, scribbling chalk messages. You matter. Stay kind. You are safe here. I stood there watching, my chest tight. None of them knew my whole story, but they came anyway. They didn't need to know everything to be kind, and that, to me, was a form of justice no courtroom could ever grant. That afternoon, as I tied up the trash bags, my phone buzzed. A message from a number I recognized. My mother. Savannah. Haley's retreat has shut down. The house lost funding. Your dad and I are staying with friends, but could we stay long? Could we stay at your place for a while? I read it over and over. No apology, not a single question about how I was, just a request. Like I was still a part of the system that had once discarded me, now being pulled back in because it was convenient. I set the bag down, wiped my hands on my shirt hem. My eyes wandered to the freshly cleared yard, where the neighbor girl was writing another line in soft lavender chalk. I didn't feel bitterness. I didn't feel anger. I just felt clarity. There was no going back to something that had never been real. I replied, "There's no space here for lies." That was it. No flourish, no drama, just a message sent. Like a door quietly closing without the need for a lock. Because what I was protecting wasn't the cabin. It was the peace I had finally found. Later that evening, I sat on the wooden steps of the porch holding a mug of black coffee. The warmth from the ceramic seeped into my dry palms. Sunlight streamed through the thick pine branches, casting soft golden patterns on the newly painted white-gray walls. A squirrel leapt onto the gutter, looked at me, then darted away, as if even it had grown used to my quiet presence here. The rotted cabin that once made me shrink from strangers' stares now stood firm after its first season of rain. I had replaced the roof myself, sealed every crack, laid bricks around the kitchen by hand, cleared out what others had left behind. No one helped me rebuild this place, but no one could tear it down either. On the front door, I had hung a small wooden sign I carved myself. Not a sanctuary for lies, but a home built on truth. I didn't need anyone to believe in its worth. I just needed to know I lived in a space where no one had to bow their head to be accepted. The yard filled with the laughter of children that afternoon. They ran across the grass, clutching chalk, leaving messy drawings along the brick path. A little girl with curly hair stopped and asked if I liked the flower she drew. I nodded and gave her a thumbs up. She beamed and ran off, leaving behind a whisper that tightened my chest. I like coming here. No one yells here. I used to think peace was a luxury, only for the fortunate. But now I realize peace isn't a reward, it's a choice. And sometimes it's the final act of resistance for those who've spent a lifetime muted by voices that were never their own. I no longer waited for anyone to knock and say sorry. I no longer looked for an extended hand to pull me back into a place that never welcomed me to begin with. I had stopped knocking on doors that weren't mine. Because now I sat on my own porch, where I didn't need a key to hold on to my dignity. Evening light poured across the wood planks, stretching to the freshly painted fence where wildflowers had just begun to bloom. I breathed deeply, letting the bird song and scent of damp earth fill my chest. No one else was shaping my story now. No one else could twist it in the name of love to make me easier to swallow. I didn't need to prove I was good enough to be kept. I just needed to know that, in the end, I had opened my own door, and behind it was a life no one could take from me. What do you think about my story? About a door that doesn't need a key, about peace that comes not from others, but from within? If you've ever felt cast out from a place that should have been your home, or had to rise on your own in the silence of those who should have cared, I hope you found a piece of yourself in this. I didn't share this for pity. I shared it to remind you that some truths, no matter how uncomfortable, deserve to be spoken. And if you have your own story, please share it, because maybe what you say today will be the light someone else needs tomorrow. Don't forget to follow the channel to stay with me through more stories like this, about the seemingly small things that can change an entire life, about families that may not be perfect, but are far more real than anything polished. Thank you for staying with me all the way to the end. See you next time.